Hey everyone, I'm Devin Dickinson. Welcome back to the Faith and Entrepreneurship Podcast with Lauren and myself. And here we're going to talk today about management versus vision and leadership and all of these kind of ethereal questions a lot of people have. So I'll kick it over to Lauren.
Hey, Devin, how are you?
Great, thanks.
So our thought was today is let's kind of delve in and pick apart this idea of managing versus leading. And is there a difference? And do you need managers and leaders? Can they be one and the same, or do you have to keep them separate? So I thought my first question for you today would be, let's just give me your idea or what you think the difference is between managing and leading.
Yeah. I think leadership is truly like casting a vision, right? Where we're all going, getting people on the same page, generating excitement, enthusiasm, drive, energy, culture. All of those things revolve around leadership. Management is basically the execution, right? Like kind of the, setting expectations for individuals and their jobs and what they do, and then holding people accountable to that. And oftentimes they're kind of used synonymously, and I really don't think they are. But as an entrepreneur, I think you probably better be pretty darn good at both.
Yeah. So what does faith teach us about leadership?
Yeah. Jesus was great at casting vision, right? But he also held people accountable. People forget about that, right? Everyone thinks about Jesus kind of this, on the Sermon on the Mount, teaching all these wonderful truths, and then the people just followed. And people did follow, but those that were directly under him, his disciples, like he managed them, right? And he corrected them and he individually grew them. And so he was a great, visionary leader, but he was also a manager of people. And you can see that in his life, the willingness to hold people accountable, the willingness to have hard conversations. That all demonstrates, kind of the management side. Also the growth, right? Like he would grow people as well. All at the same time, providing vision for the masses, management for the individuals, right? Like, and it's this crazy balance that he was able to do. And I think great entrepreneurs learn how to do this as well.
Do the traits overlap that you see between someone who could be a good manager and be a good leader, or do you feel there's different traits for each?
I think they're different traits, but it doesn't mean that you can't do both, right? And a lot of people have this escapist mentality where they're like, well, I'm the leader of the organization. I just cast the vision. I don't get my hands dirty in management. And that's kind of this escapism, idealistic world that, frankly, truly as an entrepreneur, it's just hard to do. Like unless you have, someone's thrown so much money at you that you can afford COOs and managing director, unless you can afford COOs and several layers of leadership, like the idea that you're not going to be managing people is probably a fallacy. Great entrepreneurialism at the core of it is execution. And execution demands management. It's just kind of, it has to happen. It's never about how great your idea is. It's all about how well you execute it. And so you need to be a really great manager as well. And managers are people that can, define the job, train the job, hold people accountable to the job, discipline in the job, make them better at their job. That's all basic management skills. And if all you do is provide leadership, you're kind of more of a motivational speaker than you are an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur has to be able to do both. They have to be able to take their idea, what they're driving towards, and then be able to get the people to do the jobs that equal success. Yeah. And so you kind of have to have both, in my opinion. But so many people want to just rely heavily on one or the other, wherever their natural skill set lies. And it's a recipe for disaster, because I've seen brilliant visionaries fall terribly because they can't execute.
I was going to ask you too. I feel like even on the other side, what are the consequences when you have a great manager? So, I think about sports all the time as an example. NFL football, you've got somebody who can manage and do a great offense, and you put them into a coach position through the whole team and they fail. So what are some of the consequences when you promote someone to that role without them being able to create that vision?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point, Lauren. There's a lot of folks that I've had over the years that have been great managers that we've made the assumption would be kind of a great leader. And they were not able to develop the leadership skills, the inspirational skills, the culture skills, the development of people, I shouldn't say that because you have to develop people on the manager side too, but the vision for the organization, right? Like where they couldn't bring everybody together and get everyone going the same way. They're very good at the execution, the X's and the O's, make sure the trains run on time. They're very operational minded. And I hate to say the word narrow-minded because it means that it kind of
seen as like negative.
Yeah, it's kind of a negative, but it's an incredible skill set. Great managers are really, really hard to find. And so if you're a great manager, but you kind of lack vision, that's okay. It just means maybe entrepreneurship might not be your thing, right? Like lean into your management skills and you can be a great manager. You could be a wonderful COO someday, right? Like get stuff done. You're the person that gets it done. And it's so hard to find people that can get stuff done. However, if you are looking to make this shift, you need to evaluate, like, why don't people rally around you? Why do people not trust you at the next level? What are the deficiencies that you're missing? And oftentimes it is that lack of vision, right? It's that lack of like, here's the dream that we're selling, right? They're very stuck in the here and now. How do we get the operations? How do we, do the best efficiencies that we can do? But they lack the dream casting. And I think that's sometimes where they get stuck. Again, I don't say this as a negative because if you're great at that, you can be paid very well and you have a very, 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 very successful career being a terrific operator. It's just to go to that next level in leadership is you have to be able to cast vision and dreams and dreamcast.
Can that be learned?
That's a tough one, Lauren. I've seen people get better at it. But I have seen very few true operators shift the gear and becoming a terrific dreamcaster because that's just not the world that they live in. And I don't say that again to discourage you, but I tell people to lean into their skill set. So there are some businesses that are very operational minded that, hey, if you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe you want to be in one of those, right? Like be a franchise, right? Where like the vision's kind of already cast, right? You're not really coming up with a new product. You're not coming up with a new idea. You're going to execute it and execute it well and then grow it and multiply it.
Yeah.
You could do that with 35 Burger Kings, right? Right? You could do that with, 6 Dunkin' Donuts, right? Like there's things that great operators are really good at where they don't have to necessarily come up with the vision, direction, and drive and dreams, but all they need to do is execute well. But if you can execute well, you make a lot of money.
What are some situations or some roles, let's say, where you think a manager skill set is all that's needed?
Well, definitely anything operational, right? So a franchise, something that's already a proven commodity where it's just like, hey, we know this works. The key is to do it better, more efficiently, quicker, right? Like people like that really thrive in a managerial type position, right? And that's where you're going to see returns on investment because they're just so operational minded. They don't have to come up with the idea. All they have to do is make the idea function extremely well and efficiently. And so I would really push in that type of direction.
What about now on the other side? What are the roles you see where someone who's more inclined to leadership would do really well?
So those type of folks are really great coming into a stagnant business where maybe things have been, people have done the same thing the same way for the last 20 years, and there's no new ideas, there's no innovation, there's no fresh blood. I think folks with great vision can go into, kind of boring businesses and revamp them, retool them, take them in new directions, enter new markets, have product innovations, even restructuring companies. Like people with great vision see things, they just see things differently. And they're the ones that come up with like these very innovative, totally out of the box ideas and solutions. And then they get people behind that, right? They can get people behind it. So over the years, I've done both, and I feel like I've done both fairly well. But if you ask asked me where my skill set is probably more 70% on the visionary side and 30% on the operational side. And so yesterday they brought me into a meeting. I don't get to be in a lot of meetings anymore. They kicked me out. But as a founder, they brought me into this meeting because they were talking about like retooling the website and this, that, and the other. And, I looked at it and I was like, I kind of like what we're doing here. It's kind of neat. But what we were doing is we were taking our main competitor, their site, and like saying like, how do we make our site like their site only better? Mm-hmm. And then I kind of took a step back just because I tend to see things a little differently. And I was like, I don't dislike that. And I see where we're going and I can see how there's value in that. But I was like, what if our competitor didn't exist? What's a message that's never been said out there? Why are we so much better than everybody? And so we started talking about why we're so much better. And I was like, all we're doing here is me too. Like all we're doing is like, hey, here's our competitor. Well, me too. We can do that too, or only we can do it better. And I'm like, well, everybody says that. And actually, if you look at our competitor's site, you can tell they lie about half their statements. Mm-hmm. So it's like, all we're going to do is say they're liars and we're better, right? Yeah. Like, I'm like, what if we just said something completely, totally different? All we did is create a website that screams from the top of the mountain how different we are, right? And we make it look different. We make it feel different so that you have all these other Me Too sites and then you have us. Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, Lauren, I don't know if it's a good idea. I have no idea, but it's a different vision. Yeah. And so I think that's what a lot of times visionaries can bring is like, what's innovative, what's new, what's different, how can we revolutionize? And then how can we get excited about people and get them on the same page and drive that way?
Mm-hmm. What have you learned from the Bible?
Yeah. There's a super cool story in this, Lauren. I was thinking as we were preparing for this, there's a story about Moses. Moses, he used to say that he wasn't a good speaker, right? So he would probably not consider himself a visionary because he had Aaron that would sometimes speak for him. But really, at the end of the day, like he rallied these people, took them out of slavery, led them across the desert, went through a freaking
Red Sea,
yeah. Part of the sea, right? Yeah. And takes these people into the promised land. I'd say you're a pretty good visionary, right? Well, what happens is now they're out there in the middle of the wilderness and they're kind of settling in. And his father-in-law comes and visits him. And what happens is Moses is this leader of these people, this visionary, the people that led him from the promised land. And his father-in-law comes and visits. And the father-in-law has this really weird perspective. He watches Moses day in and day out, like just settling issues and basically doing management responsibilities. And he looks at Moses and he says, dude, you're going to kill yourself. This is not sustainable. There's millions of these people and you're basically doing the day-to-day management of them. And he's like, he basically gives them a system. He's like, get 12 leaders and then put these leaders underneath and And basically he sets up management. He sets up he sets up a basic org chart for Moses to manage the people so that Moses can be free to lead and others can manage. And it's a really great, wonderful story. And I think there's a ton of takeaways. What's funny, and here's the irony of this, is I've seen so many leaders, especially faith-based leaders, a lot of pastors and whatever, and they really lean into this story. Like they really lean into it so much because they're like, they hate managing people, right? And what they want to do is they want to go and just get an office in the corner that shuts the door and they don't have to deal with anyone all week, and all they want to do is come up with a cool sermon on Sunday and stand up, and they want other people to manage and lead. And so they disconnect. And I see so many people, like I said, not just pastors, I'm kind of picking on them right now, but leaders in general that take that type of an attitude where literally they go, oh yeah, I'm going to have people manage so I can go in my ivory tower and lead and inspire and then come up with the next idea. And I don't think that's good, right? Like there's truth to it. Like there's a reason that's in the Bible, but it's not so Moses loses touch with the people, right? It's not so he isolates and doesn't understand what's going on with the people. Jim Collins talks about this all the time. You know, what people know is Good to Great book, but also they don't know about the Why the Great Fall book.
Yeah.
Right? The Great Fall book talks about how all these good companies went from good to great, and they did it from understanding the front lines of the people. And the reason why they fall is because the leaders get disconnected from the people. And so visionaries and these people that want to go and just isolate themselves from the management and the day-to-day ops become isolated and disconnected. And so I think there's a danger in there. There's lots of truths and lots of takeaways, as long as you're not using this as your excuse to not be with and understand the people. It should empower you to work with the people better, to lead the people better, not to disassociate with the people.
So one final question for you as we close up this podcast is what would you challenge our listeners or encourage our listeners to do this week to keep the idea of managing versus leading in their head?
Yeah, there's a self-evaluation here. Like, where are you? Right? Like, where are you on the scope? Are you 90-10? Are you 50-50? And then where does your organization need you to be? Right? Because so many people want to just drift into that visionary role, but their organization isn't ready for that. Or maybe you've already drifted into that and you realize, you know what? I need more management, right? And so taking that ownership of it and then reassessing and retooling your company according to the needs of the company, not you. I'm going to say that over again. I think truly, Lauren, what I would challenge people to do is understand where they're at on the spectrum. So there are people that are like 90% vision, 10% management. Some are 50-50. You know, where are you at personally versus where does your organization need you to be at? Okay? Because personally, you might be at 80% leadership, 20% management, but your organization needs you to be 80% management and 20% vision, right? And leadership. And I think people need to understand that and look at your company and say, not where do I want to be? Where does my company need to be? Where does my organization need to be? And then you adjust according to your organizational needs.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Well, I hope this helps. I'm Devin Dickinson, and this is the Faith and Entrepreneurship Podcast. Hope to see you next time.